The digital deal jacket isn't really about replacing the folder. It's about creating a better process around the deal itself.
How many people tell me, well, we don't have a fraud problem? And they're like, well, not now, you may not, but it's coming.
Okay, so the fire extinguishers on the wall right now is because you don't have a fire, but be prepared for it if it happens. Right?
You got to have everybody, management bought in and pushed in that buy-in down to the team. Says, no, this is what we're doing. You will learn how to do this. You are going to get trained.
A lot of dealers are doing remote deals. That's a whole nother question. Like, how do you know that it's really Jason on the other side of that screen or that phone? I mean, you have to have authentication.
Welcome to the 700 Credit Podcast, the future of automotive finance, compliance, identity verification, and smarter dealership processes. Let's get into it.
Hey, what's going on, Automotive Nation? Welcome back to another 700 Credit Podcast, where I got some cool people today, man. I actually have a great conversation set up for you guys. Today, we're talking about the digital deal jacket. That's right. I said it, digital deal and jacket. But I think we're going to find out pretty quickly that this is a conversation is about a lot more than just taking paper deal jackets and turning them into a digital one. It's really about a process. It's about how information moves through the dealership and how we make sure the right things happen at the right time, how we create consistency, and ultimately how we reduce some of the compliance and liability exposure that exists inside a deal. And guys, you're going to find out there's probably more than you thought. Look, I've got the one and only Ken Hill back with me today from 700 Credit. And joining us is Mitch Falink, Vice President of Lender and Aftermarket Relations at Reynolds and Reynolds. Mitch and his team spent a tremendous amount of time working directly with dealers and dealer groups across this process. Mitch, Ken, welcome to the show, guys. What's going on? How you doing?
Thank you.
Good.
Thanks for having me,
Jason.
Guys, I'm excited. I'm looking forward to recording this conversation. I remember when kind of the first digital deal jacket kind of came out, and it excited me. I don't think people realize just how far the technology has gone. So I'm excited to get into this. Hey, Mitch, real quick, can we kick this off? Maybe give everybody a little background on what you do, and more importantly, what problems your team is focused on solving inside dealerships today.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, Jason, I'm over our lender and our aftermarket relations, but really that focuses with 10 experts that are on our team. Most of them came from the F&I box, so they are truly experts in our embedded workflow. And frankly, we're just trying to decrease the time it takes for a transaction to happen in a dealership. At the same time, keep the dealer compliant. And also make sure we don't lose product penetration. So with all that, we can lower CIT, get people through the transaction quicker, and allow our dealers to stay compliant. With help of Ken's team, we put some fantastic functionality out there. I really didn't think it'd be as impactful as it is. In talking with dealers, I guess I didn't fully understand all the things that they had to go through to retain compliance documents and the different processes that they were using. And by embedding it into our deal jacket, which is in the DMS, and that's kind of our other theme. When we talk about embedded workflow, we want to use the DMS as a source of record. And it has been outstanding in terms of what our dealers have found in that functionality.
Well, and I like that's a great starting point, right? Because I think this is really going to be more of a conversation about not necessarily a piece of software. It's really a dealership operations conversation. Ken, when you hear Mitch describe some of those problems, where do you see those same issues interacting with the credit and compliance side of the deal?
Yeah, well, dealerships have a lot of responsibility to retain auditable records of some of the compliance functionality, and be able to audit that they're taking place. So I think, when you're doing things in paper deal jackets, and if you're doing things outside of the DMS, or, how do you audit? How do you retain records that you audit? And what is your process, right? What's your retention process, your procedures? So with the digital deal jacket and some of the workflow right now inside Reynolds, not only does it record all the requirements automatically, but also puts copies inside the digital deal jacket automatically. So it really streamlines the process. They also have some stop deal functions, so F&I managers can ensure certain things are happening. Otherwise, the deal doesn't go forward, right? So they can, especially when groups are trying to apply a process that they want every dealership to have in place in the F&I office, right? It really helps them mandate that across their whole group and get everybody doing the same thing, and getting rid of some of the paper copies of things like driver's licenses and risk-based pricing notices, and ensuring red flags being OFACs being done. So as Mick mentioned, the response has been overwhelmingly positive.
Mm-hmm.
And now dealers are, right, they're looking for how to streamline things even more.
Well, it's funny when I listen to both you guys kind of describe a little bit about what the digital deal jacket is. This doesn't sound like a good idea anymore. See, I remember this being presented, to me when I was at my dealership as a good idea. This feels like it's gone far, far beyond a good idea. So let's do this real quick for everybody out there watching and listening right now, Mitch. Let's define this, because I think different dealers probably hear digital deal jacket and picture different things. So what does a true digital deal jacket look like today?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So when we we look at it from the start, right? So you've got the credit application coming in. So that's our first question. How do you guys capture the credit application? You capture it digitally or paper? So that's our first kind of inquiry when we talk to our dealers and competitive stores. And then how do we handle the consumer identity? How do we make sure that that person has an authentic driver's license and they are who they say they are? And then again, the fraud piece, I'll tell you, it surprises me how many people tell me, well, we don't have a fraud problem. And they're like, well, not now, you may not, but it's coming, it will find you. And yeah, if they've got processes in place and they're not using our workflow or they're using a third party, I'll be, hey, that's fine. But let me tell you how ours works, just so you understand the functionality, because then you've got red flag, you've got OFAC, you've got privacy notification, proof of insurance, lien payoff, additional income, STIPs. All this stuff has to be captured for the deal to happen. And they have all these different ways of doing it. Some are using third-party apps, and some are just making copies of it and putting it in, a paper deal jacket.
That's scary, Mitch.
Yeah. So our focus is, how do we get that electronically, and get it so it's streamlined directly into the deal jacket and it's stored there. And again, the DMS is a source of record, because I really want to minimize the amount of third-party archiving solutions that dealers have. I'm biased as I'll get out, knock on wood, but I like our security. We're not, obviously nobody's perfect, but I feel better if I have one source of record or two versus like 4 or 5.
And then, God forbid, you actually have them on paper as well, right?
Yeah, on paper as well, right? PII out there. So that's our first presentation on the deal jacket, and then it gets into how do we validate the deal, and how do we capture customer signatures, and then the lender package, and how all that's electronically sent to the lender, or how are you sending it to the lender, which gets us into CIT, lowering CIT. So as I mentioned earlier, our focus is how do we streamline it, make it faster without sacrificing product penetration, and ensuring that we're compliant. We're getting your money as fast as we can.
Well, and I like the fact you use the word streamline, because I think that's why people have to look at this. Like, I think for a lot of us out there watching, listening, when we think of a digital deal jacket, we just think of it as another process. This actually is a major streamline. So Ken, from your side, with that distinction being so incredibly important, because having documents digitally stored somewhere doesn't necessarily mean that the proper process actually happened. Just
Yeah.
means I kind of checked off a proverbial box. So my question to you, Ken, is why is that difference so important to the dealer?
Well, sort of what I mentioned earlier, right? And that dealers and groups want to ensure these things like driver's license verification, right? You can stop the deal automatically in Reynolds that requires management approval or override, right? And if they don't capture the driver's license and validate it. So that kind of process control, empowering the dealership to say, no, this is what's going to be done on every deal. This is how it's going to be done. I think that empowering them to do that is really beneficial. And to Mitch's other point about the fraud question, unfortunately, our biggest lead channel for signups for our driver's license verification tool are dealerships sort of hobbling in. We just had a case of fraud. Okay, I know you guys got a tool. How do we implement this, right? And we have physical scanners or the mobile scanners. Both are supported inside Reynolds, and unfortunately, that's why we try to do as much education as we can. Unfortunately, they get burnt, and then they look to find a solution. So, but I'd rather it be the other way around.
I love the fact that you said get burnt. Right.
Yes.
Mitch, when you were saying like, well, we don't have a fraud problem, I'm like, okay, so the fire extinguishers on the wall right now is because you don't have a fire, but you're prepared for it if it happens, right? Like, just wanted to make sure the distinction there. And I think that's for everyone out there. I mean, look, this is the piece I keep coming back to, right? If I'm running a dealership, I don't just want to know that I've got the documents. Look, I want to know, did we do what we need? Or did we do what we were supposed to do? Okay, right? Did we do it in the right order? And can I prove that we did it correctly?
Right.
That as an operator, I keep coming back to. So here's where I want to go with this. Take me kind of inside an actual dealership. Mitch, I know you guys spend a lot of time working directly with dealerships. You guys do a phenomenal job of kind of partnering with your dealership. So here's my question. You spend, like I said, a lot of time in the stores. So give me an example of a dealership or maybe a dealer group that dedicated to move towards what this digital deal jacket process looks like, and what did their work look like before, and then kind of what did it look like afterwards?
Okay, let me start with one example because it's fresh in my mind. We were there not that long ago, and I'm not going to name names. They're a great group, actually, fantastic. They're on a competitive. They have 2 stores on a competitive DMS, and they're big. They're big stores, thousands of cars monthly. And I said, well, how would you rate your workflow? And they said, well, I'd put us in the top 10%. And I would agree. I mean, you're doing that many cars, you got to know what you're doing. And so then we just started off on, okay, how do the credit apps come in? Okay, some of them we get on paper manually, or on a paper form, and the other half we get electronically. I said, man, I really want to get that like 100% electronic. And they said, we do too. And I said, okay, let's get through the validation of the consumer. When they come in, how do we authenticate the driver's license? What do you mean? we have a scanner. I go, okay, well, oh, that's good. Does the scanner authenticate the DL? No, it screen scrapes it into our CRM. I'm like, that, we got to fix that, Like whether you do it with us or somebody else, you got to, not to mention you're in a state that mandates that you authenticate the DL. So you need to do that and you need to run fraud behind it. So, and then how do we know that the OFAC and red flag and privacy and all these things are actually happening all the time? And I didn't want to call out their director who's over the both groups, and he goes, "Well, we're doing a great job." I go, "I'm sure you are, but how do you know? How do you know it's happening every time?" He goes, "We don't." And then the CEO is like, "Well, how would you guys do it?" I go, "Well, we would stop it. We wouldn't let the deal go forward unless we can, like you guys tell us how you want the settings, and we'll stop the deal if these certain steps aren't done correctly, compliant, and the deal doesn't move forward." He goes, "We got to have that. How do we get that?" "Well, we got to switch DMSs, but okay, well, yeah, but yeah, we are helping them in other ways. They're not fully switching DMSs, but they do have a rental store, which they are moving forward with the full compliance piece of it that we can do, the electronic deal jacket integration, all that's happening. So I thought that was interesting. And then with the other stores, with our rental stores, it's pretty easy, honestly. We have to look at their bureaus. We want everything. We want, not just because we want it, but you need it. I always tell Ken, I'm like, do we have to have all this stuff? Because you do, because you can't have one piece without the other. And I said, well, that makes sense. Because if we're going to do it, we want to have everything archived in the DMS so we can go back and determine that we did everything correctly.
Of course.
So I would say we've got over 25% of our dealer base now using the electronic deal jacket integration, which is great. We're going back around to determine utilization, which has been a little tricky for us. We got to put some hooks in place to make sure that we can see who's using it and who's not, and what we got to do to go back and attend to those folks that might need some additional training. But the overall setup is pretty clean. And we just have to explain it to the dealer and what we're doing and why we want to do it and where they got to go. But once you turn it on, it's pretty automatic.
Well, and I think it sets the stage so that here's the problem, and I think for everybody out there watching and listening, we struggled with before, is that the process to purchase a vehicle is not linear. It means we have lots of mountains and valleys, and usually what creates the valley is the data collection point. Like, whoa, slow down. I got to stop everything we're doing because I got to do this, and this, right? Yeah. So I think when you get a good, clean, linear process in place, that makes a big difference. Ken, when somebody makes that transition, what has to happen behind the scenes for all of these different pieces to start working together? Because we got a lot of acronyms thrown out, a lot of things and steps like that. Kind of give me a peek behind. I know, most people go to a restaurant, they don't want to see the backside of the kitchen. I kind of am asking you, what does it look like on the backside of the kitchen?
Well, it's as Mitch mentioned, we got the setup process, I think, honed in, but we didn't start out that way. There was so many pieces and so many in various locations in all of our systems, right, that got to be configured. I think we honed it in. We got a good checklist, and getting all those things operational, working with the dealer to make sure they're happening, show them how easy it is. It's not just flip a switch and wish them good luck, right? You want them to adopt these processes in order for the whole piece to stick, right? And to people to adopt it and start using it. So, that's a whole team, but we have that team in place, and they've all been, through it and through the pains of some of our early learning, but now they got it dialed in and they know what to do, how to fix it. If something dealer says, hey, this isn't, my credit app isn't going into the deal jacket. Okay, well, go to the settings. So this has got to be set like this over here. This got to be set like this over here. And then boom, it starts going, right? And like just the credit app alone, being able to capture that consumer credit application where they signed, right, the credit app and said, yes, you have authorization to pull my credit, and then storing that all in the deal jacket, right? That's a big piece.
Yeah.
It's a big piece for a dealer. They got to retain that for 5 years.
Well, and yes, and we're going to get to the compliance liability section for sure. But I do want to go a little bit farther down this rabbit hole because you're so right. The process really does matter. I mean, this is where I want to kind of stop for a second because, we use the word technology a lot in automotive, right? It almost kind of seems to be the answer for everything. Like, you got a problem? Well, we got a tech solution. I got a pill for that. I got a pill for this. I got a pill for that. You want more tech? We'll give you more tech, right? But putting technology on top of a bad process doesn't really necessarily fix the process. So, Mitch, I want to ask you this because I'm sure you've seen this play out multiple times. How much of successful implementing a digital deal jacket is really process change?
I don't know how much of it is process change for them. It depends. That's another good question. We have a number of stores and groups that are using third-party solutions, and
Sure.
that's great. Hey, if you guys are comfortable with it and you feel protected, then that's fine. Again, I'm just here to show you how we do it. And then they're like, well, we're great. We use Comply Auto or whoever they use. And I'll be like, okay, that's great. They're a great company. However, how does it get into your deal jacket? How does it get into the DMS? Well, it doesn't, or we have to upload it, or doesn't get there all the time. I go, so then you've got another portal that you have to manage. And I tell them, I'm just saying, I just want to try and do that seamlessly so it all is captured in the electronic deal jacket EEJ seamlessly. You upload SPIP, it's dropped in there. You scan the DL, whether you scan it in store or you capture the driver's license remotely, which a lot of dealers are doing remote deals. That's a whole nother question. Like, how do you know that it's really Jason on the other side of that screen or that phone? I mean, you have to have authentication.
Well, and you're right. It's the technology and the authentication that kind of goes along with this, right? I mean, Ken, you and I have talked about the one time I got burned, and as a dealer, yes, I admitted I got burned. And guys, I know a lot of you out there watching a listing right now, you just don't want to admit it, all right? But it happens more often than we actually know. And Mitch, what ended up happening to me is that I had a process in place. I was utilizing technology, all right, to effectively manage that process. But like most of us, all right, we find the path of least resistance. And, this specific manager, because there was just a lot going on in his plate, 6 people out the door, and he's got stuff stacked up here, right, that he found a way to go around it and just make things go quicker, which I understand was all good intentions, just happened to happen on the wrong day with the wrong customer in there, and I ended up paying the price for it. So Ken, here's my question for you. Like, what do you see on the compliance side when everybody in the dealership is doing the same process versus everybody doing it their own way?
Well, it makes things run a lot more seamlessly and smooth, right? If I know everybody's doing it the same way and a lot of it's automated, and the process is the same, it's just more efficient. Training new people, transition is more efficient, and if everybody's using the same systems to validate things are being done, and they know that their deal's not going to get done unless they do it, it's just more efficient. And I think to Mitch's initial point, it lets the transaction happen a lot more smoothly and quickly.
Well, and I like to go down that rabbit hole a little bit with you, Mitch, because you made a good point there. Is consistency actually one of the biggest benefits here? Have you seen this play out? And I'm thinking both for the dealer and from the consumer's perspective.
I thought when Ken told me, hey, we're putting this deal stopgap in, I was thinking, oh man, I mean, it's gonna, no, I'm trying to speed it up and now you're gonna stop it. These guys kill me. they all, I mean, I don't know anybody that doesn't want it. I literally don't have a dealer that I brought that up to that said, we don't want to do that. I can't think of one. And and you brought up a good point, Jason, because when the problems happen, it's when they're 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 deep on a Saturday.
100%.
And sometimes more depending on the size of the store.
Yeah.
Because that's when they got them, they got people waiting, and that's when mistakes happen. So that's really what we're focused on all the way through is how can we streamline the process like I talked about all the way, not only just on the compliance side, but how do we do it faster funding? How do we get validated faster? How do we serve up the forms so we don't have to sift through and we have recommended forms that launch by lender automatically, validate correctly, and then ultimately serve it up to the lender so we can get funded. But I know this is a compliance podcast, but we really want it all, we want it done all the way through correctly so that we don't have a problem later on with the consumer. And that last piece, I think the one thing I'm biased as I'll get up, but the one thing we do really well is if there is a consumer problem and you have a complete audit trail that is archived in your electronic deal jacket, it's pretty bulletproof. If everything was done correctly, it's a pretty much get out of jail free card.
Well, and that's that beautiful marriage when process and technology meet with each other. Because I think for everybody out there watching, you guys do have technology. I'm sure you do have or some variation of the technologies that we discussed today. But you hear Mitch talk about it's when process and technology collide with each other, you get a level of consistency in your operations you just ever had before, and you minimize liability and compliance in a big way. So here's where I like to go with this. I'm thinking of all the dealers out there, maybe watching listings right now. Mitch, I'll start with you, and then Ken, I'm going to ask you the same or something similar to this. What do good dealers do differently? And I think Mitch, you were kind of talking about as you're kind of going more down the full ecosystem. So you've seen groups implement this really well. In fact, we talked about one, right? Or ones that were looking into it, and I'm sure you've seen others struggle with it. You've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly, and not my favorite movie, which it is one of the best movies of all time, hands down.
Movie.
But you've seen it all. You've really seen it all. You've seen the good, bad. What's the difference in between kind of that good, the bad, and the ugly?
Yeah, it's absolutely the people. This is the way we've always done it, and we're going to continue to do it this way. And the people that say, okay, we're going to move in this direction because that makes sense. And like Ken said, and we got to have dealers listen to it. We had our fair share of bad launches and bad training and missed setups, and like we made mistakes early, but we've really honed it in. I feel really good about the launch and the training, and so I think it's not only the dealers that want to move into a more compliant and a better workflow, but they also ensure that their people are held accountable for it. So they're at training. I mean, that's a big deal. Like we don't want to have to chase an F&I person down when we're trying to help them, because we're stacked up. We got 100 of these to launch, so we tell them that going in, like, I'm in, like, we'll do whatever. We've got an army of resource behind this thing and really fantastic people on both sides. Both Reynolds and 700 Credit are great people. I'm biased, but some of the best. But you got to make sure that F&I manager knows that this training is happening, and I need an hour, of their dedicated time to make sure they know where to access this stuff. And once we're done, we're pretty solid at that point. But I think that's the biggest thing. And I think that to put a bow on it, I think AI is a scary thing. Like the fraudsters, they can do so much with AI in not only mimicking voices and, putting people's faces on podcasts and changing driver's license to.
Yeah, it's not really Mitch.
Yeah,
Jason.
it's a true story out there.
Neither one of you guys are here right now. I'm actually just talking.
But it's
Yeah.
great. But I think they need to be held, understand that and make sure that they take all the stopgaps on it.
Yeah, and that's some of the things that we have burned into our processes now, right? No, we need your IT admin on this call, right, at each dealership. But it starts with management, leadership within the dealership, and making sure people are bought in and they don't have the Freddie Flintstone guys in the corner. How he used to stop his car with the feet dragging, and you got to drag them all the way there, right? No, you can't, everybody's got to be bought in, because that one F&I manager or someone that's not bought in, right? And now he's not doing things, and that's contagious inside of a store, right? Oh, yeah, I don't do it that way. Don't do it that way, right? So you can't have those lone gunslingers out there, right? You got to have everybody, management, bought in and push in that buy-in down to the team. Says, no, this is what we're doing. You will learn how to do this. You are going to get trained, right? And then everything is downhill from there.
Well, guys, consistency breeds efficiency.
Yeah.
I think for anybody out there watching and listening, and are considering to do this, we'll definitely reach out to Mitch. But for sure, understand that, guys, whenever you get consistent at something, you get better at it. And you eventually just get to the point you just stop thinking about it. It's funny, I'm watching my son right now go through soccer, and he's practicing with a kicking coach. And it gets to the point where you just don't think about it. You just do it. But the execution of it just continues to get better. Here's where I like to go, because I know we're getting towards the tail end of our conversation. So here's where I want to finish. Where this is all going. So I'm going to ask you guys both this kind of question, right? Let's look forward. Okay. If we had this same conversation again 3 years from now, what do you think would be different? Mitch, I'll ask you from a digital jacket perspective, and then Ken, I'm going to ask you from more of an automated or credit or compliance or identity perspective. So Mitch, I'll let you answer first.
Yeah, I would say that's another good one. Yeah, good questions. I wasn't ready for that one, but
Yeah.
I think the biggest change I see would be in the forms, serving up the forms, both what needs to be digitally signed and what needs to be sent to the lender. That we do a really great job with that today, but again, it's a lot of work. And I think AI can help us in that respect, in terms of determining exactly what forms need to be signed if we're using Cap One and it's a lease and we have a single trade and it's a co-buyer and whatever other situation, or it's out of state, and then taking that lending package and making sure that it's exactly what needs to be sent to that specific lender.
A couple of things for me. One, Mitch mentioned at the beginning about only 25%. I mean, we've, it's 1,500 dealers that we brought on in the last year and a half, but I think 3 years from now, that 25% dealers doing it this way will be north of 75%.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And in terms of some more automation, I think right now the big push to making insurance information verifiable, and electronically being able to, sign up a new car and an insurance policy, so you don't have that annoying half-hour conversation with the insurance provider inside the dealership. I think those are things that are up next. Look where we are with driver's licenses, where we were 3 years ago.
100%.
We're at 47 states now where we can get live data verification of the driver's license.
Yeah, that's actually a great point, because when I have dealers say we're using ABC company, we got it, and they'll be like, okay, because I'm like, am I trying to sell them stuff? Sure, but really, I'm trying to be more, hey, if I was running this store, how would I want it? How would I want it ran? Really, that's really what I'm doing. That's the only way you can be successful, in my opinion. So I'll be like, okay, that's great. You're using ABC company to take your driver's license and capture all that information, and you like it? Yeah, we love it. Well, then I'll go to Ken, and he'll be like, that's great, but it doesn't cross over this database, and it's not doing this. And I'm like, oh, well, I didn't know that. So then I go back to him, they're like, we had no idea. I go, it's okay, but it's not perfect.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
there's still a lot of room there, guys. I love kind of both your guys' answers here. I love as an operator, whenever you continue to find more efficiencies and more streamlines, that gets me excited. I know it doesn't do it for everybody, but it does it for me. And then Mitch, man, I'm down with the whole predictive element that you just described there. Because talk about one of the things as still even an F&I manager that I still think is one of the most difficult things for a lot of F&I managers out there is just who do I send this to? Being able to create a predictive model around the collective information that you've already built up to this place, because that part is still a manual thing. That the presenting and figuring out who you're going to send to, which bank you're going to send to,
Right.
and going to come back. That is still a very manual thing. So both of those get me very, very excited. And I think what you guys said here, that is the biggest takeaway from today's conversation. So I hope everybody out there watching and listening, you guys have taken some notes. Look, here's what I'm going to say. The digital deal jacket isn't really about replacing the folder. It's about creating a better process around the deal itself. It's better flow of information, more consistency, better visibility, and ultimately a process that gives your dealership more confidence that things that need to happen are actually happening. Mitch, thanks so much for taking the time to join us. This is
thank you.
class. And then, Ken, as always, I have fun.
Yes.
We have fun doing
Thanks, Jason. Appreciate it. Another good conversation. Enjoyed it. Thank you, Mitch.
And thank you for everybody out there watching and listening. We really appreciate you. Look, one of the biggest compliments you can give us as content creators is share the show. If you got a manager or a colleague or an owner that needs to see some portion of today's conversation, be a hero, share the show. Thank you guys for taking the time to watch and listen. You guys have yourself an amazing day. Thanks, Ken.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the 700 Credit Podcast. Tighten your process, protect your deals. See you in the next episode.